Okay, I'd like to study today basically one verse, one enigmatic verse from our parsha of Shemos, a very, very very opaque verse. And I'd like to study with everyone and just see several different explanations. Of course, as always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So this week, Moshe is the story of the burning bush. Moshe meets God for the first time. Most likely was where I was standing in Saudi Arabia on Mount Sinai. And Moshe is sent by God on a mission. And he's said to go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to release the children of Israel. And Moshe says to God, "Who am I that I can go to Pharaoh?" And God says, "Don't worry, I'll be with you." And God gives him a sign. And then Moshe says to God, "But when I go to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says to me, and I say to him, the God of your forefathers, when I go to the children of Israel and I say to them, the God of your forefathers sent me to you, and they'll say to me, what is his name? What should I say to them? When they say to me, what is his name? What should I say to them?" And now we have this verse 14, very, very difficult, challenging verse, very difficult, very complicated verse, but I'll read it and then we'll do the best we can to try to understand it. So the verse states, Vayomer Elokim Moshe, God says to Moshe, Eya asher Eya, I will be that I will be. Well, that's how I'm translating it. But that doesn't even make any sense. Vayomer Kotomar of Israel, and God says, this is what you shall say to the children of Israel, Eya Shalachani Alechem. Eya sent me to you. So is this the name of God? Is this the name of God that he's being that and then if that's the case, what is the name of God? Is the name of God Aleph, Hey, and then Yud, Hey? And this is halachic ramifications. I'll just give you two ramifications. First of all, one ramification is that when you're writing a Torah, before you write the name of God, you have to say L'Shem Kedushas Sefer, L'Shem Kedushas Hashem, for the whole purpose of writing the holy name of God. And also, if it's the name of God, you're not allowed to erase it. He says, is this to be viewed as the name of God? Separate from that, what kind of name is this? I mean, if this is the name of God, how come we don't use it any other time? Whenever, like in our prayers, we say, Baruch atah Hashem. We don't say Baruch atah, and then this word Eya, to be. In fact, the verb to be is often, such a ubiquitous term in the Hebrew language. If it's the name of God, we're always erasing it. So how can we understand this to be the name of God? But Moshe asks God, what should I tell them your name is? And God says, tell them, Eya Asher Eya. Is the word Asher part of that? Is the word Asher the name of God? What is going on here? So Rashi seems to understand that it's not the name of God. Rashi seems to understand that it's not the name of God. Because what does Rashi say? Well, first of all, before we go to Rashi, let me read the even earlier commentary than Rashi, which is Onkelos, the Aramaic translation. And this is how Onkelos translates this verse. The Amar Hashem Moshe, and God said to Moses, Eya Asher Eya. He doesn't translate it. He says, I will be that I will be. V'amar kidinon teimar of Israel. Like this you shall say to the children of Israel, Eya shalachani levason. Eya, meaning to say, Onkelos seems to say, Eya sent me to you. Onkelos seems to understand that this is actually a name of God. A name of God. And the name of God is this four-letter name of God called Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey. Comes along Rashi, and Rashi says, what does this mean? Eya asher eya. Rashi understands that's not a name of God, but it means it's a promise. When they ask me, what's his name? I shall say to them, Eya imam b'tzarazu. I will be with them in this distress, in this trouble that they're in, i.e. this enslavement by the Egyptians. Asher eya imam b'shibut shar malchus. Just like I'll be with them when they have future enslavements, future enslavements to other kingdoms. This isn't going to be the last time they're enslaved. Tell them that. So Moshe turns to God and he says, Ribbono shel olam, Master of the universe, Mani maskir lahem tzara acheres. Why do I have to start telling them that there's going to be other problems? Nayam b'tzarazu, isn't it bad enough that we have the trouble, that we have the current one? So they're going to say, what's your name? He says, I'll be with them in the future when they're enslaved. This is like creating bad news. So God said to him, Yafeh amarta. You know what, Moshe? You spoke correctly. Thus you shall say, I will be to them like I will be. But this is very difficult. What does it mean? God is corrected by Moshe? I never remember another case in the entire corpus of Rashi where God has made a mistake, or so to speak, God is said, Yafeh amarta, that God said one way, and he has to be told he's not speaking the right way. This strikes me as highly unusual. Off the top of my head, I cannot even think of another example where God is corrected. God is corrected in the text of Rashi. So we have to understand, what was God's havamina? Why did God suggest this answer? And before we get to that, but we can say that right away we see that there's a fundamentally different approach between Onkelos and Rashi as to how to understand this verse. Onkelos is saying that you shall tell them that my name is Eya. What does that mean? My name is to be? To be or not to be? That's my name? What does it even mean? And Rashi says, no, it means it's a promise that I'll be with you. So then he's not answering the question. His question was, what's his name? What's God's name? And his answer is, I'll be with you. So he's not even answering, he's not even identifying the name of God. So again, we're just studying one pasuk, chapter 3, verse 14. The children of Israel, Moshe says, you want me to go to the children of Israel and say that the God of your forefathers sent me to lead you out? They're going to ask me, who is this God? What's his name? And God says, tell them, Eya asher eya, which means I'll be that I'll be. And he says, this is what you shall say, Eya sent me to you. So Onkelos understands that this is an answer to the question. He's saying that this is your name of God. My name is Eya. Well, if that's the case, how come we never ever see any other times that God is called by this name? It's unusual. And Rashi takes a different approach. Rashi says, no, it means it's a promise that I will be with you. Just like I was with you in this distress, I'll be with you in another distress. And then to which Moshe responds and says to God, why are you telling them about other distresses? This one's bad enough. And God says, you're right, Moshe. Just tell them, I will be with you. So according to this approach, we have two questions. One question is, have we ever seen any other time where God says he made a mistake and Moshe corrects him? This is unusual. And number two, he doesn't answer the question. Moshe says, tell me what I should say your name is, and God doesn't give a response to that. So I've been thinking a lot about these questions, and I saw a few commentaries, and I wanted to share them with you, but first I wanted to just pause, see if anybody has their own answers to some of these questions. Let me see if anybody has an answer. And I like to share the approach of the Baal HaTurim, then the approach of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and then the approach of Rabbi Soloveitchik. And the Baal HaTurim is always a great place to look to when the Torah is clearly written in codes, and you get the feeling when you read this verse. Some verses you get the feeling that there's definitely a literal explanation, but here it seems pretty clear that there's something mystical, theological going beyond the literal explanation, and it's hard to imagine that there could even be a pshat, literal explanation of this verse. So the Baal HaTurim says as follows, that it says Eya 3 times in this verse, Eya Asher Eya 3 times, Keneged Shlosha Avos. It corresponds to the 3 patriarchs. And who are the 3 patriarchs? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. By Abraham it says Veye Biracha, so the verb to be also, Abraham shall be a blessing. Yitzchak, because it says Gur Ba'aretz Azos Veye Emcha, I will be with you. And again, the verb to be. And Yaakov Shuval Eretz Avosecha Veye Imach, I will be with you. So you see that this verb to be very prominently appears as an identification with each of the patriarchs. That God is existence. And I want to say the next commentary of the Baal HaTurim is as follows. He says, what does it mean, Eya? The numerical value of the word Eya, Ola Esrim Vechad, it comes out to 21. What do we know is 21? V'chein hatchalat shalosh shemot shal shlosh esrei midot Hashem 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 Kel. Meaning to say, the initial letters of the 3 divine names, which begin with 13 attributes of God, are Yud, Yud, and then Aleph, which comes to 21. And then the gematria of the initial letters of the names of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is also 21. And the initial letters of the 5 books of the Torah, Bereshit, Ve'ela Shemot, Vav Vayikra, Vav Vayidav of Bamidbar, and the Aleph of Devarim are also 21. So the gematria of 2 times Eya is 42, which implies that God taught Moses the 42-letter name of God. So basically what the Baal HaTurim is arguing is that Moshe was given this secret name of God here, the 42-letter name of God, but it was given in a secret manner because this name of God was too dangerous to be given all at once, to be given to the masses, to be given to everybody, because it's such a powerful spiritual tool. So people weren't ready for it. And so therefore, for this reason, it was given in a secretive manner, but it was alluding to the fact that this is the essential name of God. I just want to say that Bill sent me an important paragraph from just now, which I'll read to everybody. And it's, I guess, a direct quote. In considering God's name, the importance of the Eya lies in the fact that it is the imperfect of the verb to be. The imperfect, so basically, the perfect means the past tense. The perfect is the even more past tense. So the imperfect, I guess, is the future tense. It says God is, but his being is not completed like that of a thing. It means God will be, but is a living process, a becoming. Only a thing, that is, that which has reached its final form, can have a name. A free translation of God's answer to Moses would be, my name is nameless. Tell them that nameless has sent you. That's my essential name. My name is nameless. Meaning to say, not that I have no name, but my name is that I have no name. Only idols have names because they are things. The living God cannot have a name. In the name of Ehyeh, we find an ironical compromise between God's concession to the ignorance of the people and his insistence that he must be a nameless God. So God cannot have a picture, God cannot have an image, God cannot even have a name. God's only name is nameless, that I'm incapable of having a name. That's what Fromm's Chiddush is. That's what Fromm's essential point is. So, okay, so now we've seen Fromm, we've seen Rashi, we've seen Onkelos, we've seen the Balaturim, and now I want to read from Rabbi Soloveitchik and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Soloveitchik is also very heavy here, very, very heavy here, very heavy, as you can expect. Let's see what Rabbi Soloveitchik says. So the Soloveitchik translation translates Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh as I am that I am. That's how it translates it. Okay, with a nod to Bruce, it translates it as I am that I am. So, okay, let's go with this. He has 3 paragraphs here, which are very, very deep. So we have to go slowly. Immediate ontological awareness concedes that there is no reality without God. He says anybody who's thinking deeply about these issues recognizes that there's no reality without God. The metaphysics of the book of redemption, Rabbi Soloveitchik calls Exodus the book of redemption. And he's giving this as a speech, from there shall you seek, is expressed in the phrase I am that I am. So basically Rabbi Soloveitchik is saying, like Fromm, probably writing around the exact same time, they're arguing that this is the key verse of the metaphysics of the entire book of Exodus, but really of the entire book of the Torah. I necessarily exist. And wherever you find being, you will discern the illumination of my soul existence. Let me repeat that. I necessarily exist. Wherever you find being, you will discern the illumination of my soul existence. Wherever someone or something is in the finite third person, the I am of the infinite I reveals itself. The deity is the pure existence that brings everything into existence and encompasses everything. God's link to the world is not grasped only in the definition of cause and effect. It is embodied in the continuous profusion of the bestowal of being. The relative creature is hewn out of the rock of the absolute. There is no existence without God, and there is no reality without reliance on him. God therefore draws after him the creature who yearns for complete existence, who senses the emptiness of his world and the dependence of his concrete being. So the way I understand Rabbi Soloveitchik's first paragraph is God is saying, I am the only thing that exists. Everything else only draws its existence from me. From me. The other things that are finite, the only reason why they have existence is because of their relationship to me. If there is a world, if anything at all is real, then there is a God who is the foundation and origin of everything that exists. If there is a self, if man exists, then there is a living personal God who fills the consciousness of the self. It's impossible to think, to speak, to discuss the reality of the world and the reality of man without living and sensing the source of being, I am that I am. So basically, all of our existence is only possible through a recognition of God. And this is what he writes. The religious sensibility does not offer decisive proofs, draw inferences, or make deductions. It senses and experiences God in its innermost ontological consciousness. Without him, there is no reality. Taste and see how good is the Lord. Happy is the man who takes refuge in him. Just as someone who sees a tree does not deduce indirectly that there are roots underground, for in the very perception of the trunk, there is knowledge of the roots. So too, man has no need to draw conclusions about God, for he knows God directly through the world. The words of Isaiah, lift high your eyes and see who created these, or the rabbinic statement, there cannot be an illuminated castle without an owner or leader, are not meant to refer to abstract logical proofs or complicated demonstrations. On the contrary, they refer to the immediate awareness that overcomes man who sees God in the innermost essence of the world, as well as its surroundings. So the way I understand what Rabbi Soloveitchik is arguing here is, you want to know what my name is? I can't give you, we're not going to give you a scientific proof. We're not going to give you a lecture from the university. We're going to say we're existence, and you have to sense us. You sense an awareness of God. And if you sense that awareness of God, that's who I am. This existence, this awareness of God. I was having a conversation with somebody who wants to be very careful about observing Shabbos. And he said to me, why is it on Shabbos I can't do my laundry? On Shabbos I can't do, I have a hobby. I like to hammer things. I like to build things. Why am I not allowed to do that on Shabbos? On Shabbos, so I quoted this pasuk. On Shabbos, it's a reminder just to exist is to be with God. Just having existence in this world, to just allow ourselves to fall into the existence without trying to be the existence, without trying to create the existence. Our job is to immerse ourselves in the existence. And that is the way I read God's answer. Tell them existence sent me to you. The very existence, everything is based upon this concept. This concept can't be defined, as Fromm says, or limited by a name, because it is the essential existence of the world. Yes, Bruce or April, and then I want to go to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Let's go to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, and he, to my mind, he is very, very sophisticated, very, very deep approach here. So first he cites by quoting what's called the Targum Yerushalmi, in the Jerusalem Targum. So he said that the Targum means a translation. And he says, first of all, we look at this verse, and the Targum Yerushalmi says, say to the children of Israel, Eyeh shalachani aleichem. He doesn't translate it. That's the point. He never translates it. He says, this is what you should say to the children of Israel, meaning it's a direct quote. You have to say these exact words, meaning even if you're speaking a different language, you have to say, Eyeh shalachani aleichem. And also he says something similar. When you do the priestly blessing, the Birkat Kohanim, that there are certain parts, if you listen every day at 10 minutes, we have 10 minutes of halacha from Rabbi Yosef Goldman. And he said there are certain parts of the prayers you're allowed to translate, certain parts you're not. But the Birkat Kohanim, you're not supposed to translate. It has to be said specifically in Hebrew. And so this is a part that the Jerusalem Targum says you're not supposed to translate. This is the exact answer. And now the Targum Onkelos, which is what I cited earlier, says that God said to Moshe, Eyeh asher eyeh, and you shall say to the children of Israel, Eyeh shlachani l'tachon, meaning to say that even asher, Eyeh asher eyeh, that even though the name of God is also Asher. So he says, Eyeh Asher Eyeh, all that is a name of God. I will be that which I will be. All of that is one long name of God. But Nachmanides writes as follows. Nachmanides Ramban writes, Onkelos translates Eyeh im man de'eyeh. I will be with that which I will be. V'lo tirgim klal Hashem. But he does not translate at all the name of God. He says, this is what you should say to the children of Israel, Eyeh shalachani aleichem. So basically, Nachmani seems to understand that the name of God is not Asher, but Ehyeh. And quotes Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, that the name, he quotes the Vilna Gaon, who says, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. So what this means is that he says only the first Ehyeh is divine, but not the second one. Now comes along Maimonides and those who have been studying with Shaul, Rav Shaul, on Wednesday nights in our Guide to the Perplexed class. This is related to what he's been discussing. Maimonides writes in his Laws of the Foundations of the Torah with respect to the prohibition against erasing the name of God. And he writes that even though, and he says, first of all, there are several different versions of Maimonides, but he says that the Rambam's opinion is that Ehyeh is not a name of God. It's not a name of God. So it's not, even though there are others who've said that this is a name of God. And this is where Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, I think, is getting to his point about why he's bringing this down. He says Ehyeh is not a name of God. Well, if that's the case, if it's not a name of God, how does Maimonides understand this verse? So basically, we want to know, how does Judaism's greatest philosopher, greatest theologian, understand this verse? So he says, how can he explain it? Because God seems to be saying, this is my name. So we need to understand it as follows, that Maimonides is speaking like Rashbam. Who's Rashbam? Rashbam is Rashi's grandson, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir. And he was clearly there's one time where Tosfos quotes Rambam, but I'm sure it's not. I don't know if it was actually said contemporaneously. But Rashbam lives around the same time as Maimonides, but there's no evidence that they interacted at all. So, but they came to the same idea. And he says, if you don't know my name, Ani omer lecha, I'll tell you, Kishmi Ehyeh la'olam. My name will be forever. You don't know my name? Well, I can promise you I'll be here forever, and I promise you I'll keep my promise. Ella, Hashem Hashem, who's the God of your fathers, which is an expression of kingship, Zeshmi Lolam. This is my name forever. Ehyeh ha'amur b'pasuk rishon, the Ehyeh that is said in the first verse, v'zeh zichri Hashem, and this is my remembrance of Hashem, ha'amur b'pasuk sheni, which is an expression of kingship, u'be'inyan zeh maskirim et hamelachim, meaning to say that Hashem zeh Shem Hashem, ela she'akadosh baruch hu, meaning to say the name of God is Yud K and Vav K, but God calls himself by the name Ehyeh, meaning to say God's name is Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which we don't pronounce. That's what there's a group called themselves witnesses, but we don't pronounce that name because we think that the name that's God's name. But God himself calls himself by the name Ehyeh. Why is he calling himself by the name Ehyeh? Because he wants to teach us this idea that God's very essence is eternal existence, meaning I cannot be defined by a name. And so he says, this is what Maimonides writes in the Guide to the Perplexed, that it's not an actual name, but it is a reality of the situation. And so that's what God is saying. God is saying, my name is Yud K Vav K, but I am the essence of existence. And that's, I think, going back to the point Elaine raised, that's what Moshe is being taught by God here as a way of teaching this fundamental lesson, that up until now we've never seen in the Torah any distinction between between the God of the Jews and any other gods. We've never seen any distinction. We've never said that, okay, Hashem has been the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but never has he said, I'm any different than any other of the lords or the pagan gods. But now, for the first time, we're seeing that Hashem is different. Hashem does not represent a name. Hashem doesn't represent a tribal identity. Hashem represents the very existence in the world, an existence which I think both Maimonides and Fromm and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky and Rabbi Soloveitchik are saying, which is an existence which cannot be defined but can be felt, an existence which is continuing to grow by definition, because it can't be limited by being in a place. Even though Rambam would say you can't describe God in those terms, but that's the essence of what it's saying. That it is limitless and it is axiomatic, and that's this verse, and that's why God chooses to enter Moshe in this manner. That existence is what my essence is. Anyway, that's what I wanted to just do for today, a deep study of this one pasuk, chapter 3, verse 14. And before anybody goes, I want to just share a scheduling note. God willing,